Hey everybody, thank you for coming to week 5 for Healthy Aging Month. It's been so awesome. We've talked about gut health, hormones, Eastern medicine, herbs, stress, everything. We talked about healthy vaginas all the way to healthy guts. It's been an awesome 5 weeks, and this is the one I've been really waiting for because it's so important to talk about stress. So that being said, welcome. My name is Cam. I'm your Healthy Aging Coach, and let's learn today. Stress, you'll see in your worksheet, is the foundation of healthy aging. If you're stressed out, you can't eat the best diet and have the most organic food and everything. Your body is in a different mode. You'll see in the chart on the worksheet that we have 2 different modes. We have parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And when you have one triggered into the flight or fight mode, your body is stopping digestion. It's crazy. Your body, when you're stressed, doesn't digest. That's when you rest, you digest. I learned that at a gut health conference about 6 months ago, and it kind of clicked in me about how important we need to turn off that flight or fight syndrome that we all have, because I truly believe that after every stressful event, some trauma in our life, grief, we age. So being able to get through that, it's not self-care, it's stress care. And this whole morning is going to be talking about stress care and how can we switch off our nervous system to be more healthy and more calm so we can digest and go back to normal. So first, my very first healthy love of wellness came from Pilates. I remember my first class and it changed everything. Just getting on the reformer. I had never taken Pilates. I had always assumed it's something celebrities did. I didn't know much about it, but one thing that really changed in me is that I have asthma. I've had it my whole life, and Pilates teaches you to breathe, and we learned from Catherine Kipp and from our Eastern medicine segment that breathing is what turns off the fight or flight and put you into calming. So that's what I love about Pilates, is not only is it a great workout and it's lengthening, but it teaches you the breath, and breath is life, and breath is what fuels movement. It's what fuels everything. So I'm excited to have Rachel Bryce on the call. She actually trained me. She was one of my trainers for Pilates. She's been involved for over 20 years. She's a leader. She trains Pilates instructors. She trains other, and I don't even call her a Pilates trainer. She's a teacher. When you go and take from Rachel, you're not just being trained, you're not being toned, your butt's gonna hurt, your abs are gonna shake, and you're gonna cry for mercy, but you're also being taught about your body. She is a true teacher of movement and shares the gift of movement with others. So I'm so excited to have you on today to talk a little bit Pilates. Welcome. Let me get you, oh, there you go. There you go.
Thank you, Cameron. That is such lovely words. It feels like a lot of pressure to live up to. Yes, I'm happy to be here. I love teaching and I love moving, and Pilates really taught me what I was made of early on in my life. I had the privilege of starting in my early 20s. I'm now in my mid 40s. And I was still at a place where I was fairly insecure in my life. I didn't really exactly know who I was, who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And Pilates really found me, and it taught me what I was made of from the inside out. And that's part of why I've stayed devoted and in love with it for so long. I had moved for years. I had been a professional dancer prior to finding Pilates. And the first time I did a Pilates session, it was unlike any movement I had ever done. Out of all the, jazz, ballet, contemporary, improv, choreography, all of the tap, all the big hitters. And it moved me in such a different way. It rooted me. I don't really know what else to say about that, but I love it. And I love teaching other people to become teachers. It's something that I am supremely passionate about, mostly because it is my goal in life to preserve the Pilates method as Joe Pilates intended it to be. And so that's been a mainstay in my career for 20 years. And I love it and live it. And I'm happy and honored that you asked me, Cameron. So yeah, what questions do you have for me today?
Well, let's talk a little. I think before I started Pilates, I think everybody's heard about the Malibu chair you can buy on the infomercial. But I had one. I'm just going to say it before I even knew what Pilates was. I'm like, that looks good, and I need a good butt, so I'm going to get it. Buy now. And but what is Pilates? Who is Pilates? You talk about preserving the Joe Pilates method. What does that mean?
Yeah. Susan Lucci was not wrong. It was a solid infomercial. The Malibu chair was a good place to try to get a lot of people to know what Pilates was. I think that the first lesson I want to start off with is that a lot of people think that Pilates was born 20 years ago, somewhere in the early 2000s, that it was a new trend that was starting and it was very popular amongst dancers and actresses and that sort of thing. But in fact, Pilates is very old. The creator of Pilates was a man named Joseph H. Pilates. He was born in 1883 and he died in 1967. And what happened was when he died, brief little history lesson, when he died, he had no living will. He was, beautifully gifted at everything he did. Business, I don't know. There wasn't like there was all kinds of copyrights, although we do know that he tried many, 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 many patents to get approved. And a couple of them did. But there was no living will. So when he died, there was a handful of people left standing. One of the main people was Ramona Karanowska, Kathy Grant, Lolita San Miguel, Ron Fletcher, and a number of others, and Carola Trier. They were and had been students of Joe Pilates that he also deemed like, you may teach my method. And so they all kind of spread out and went and did their own thing. Ramona was the one that kept the New York studio going with Joe's wife, Clara, who died about 10 years after Joe did. And Ramona kept it going. She did a great job. She was a gifted teacher. I never had the pleasure to take from her, but I did have the pleasure to meet her once, and she did not disappoint. She wanted to know who my teacher was and then informed me that my teacher did not actually want to learn. And if you knew them both, that would be very funny because they are strong female personalities. So I was like, yes, I love you both. So Ramona was very poor at business though. And she often associated herself with business people that would take advantage of her. And one of the people that took advantage of her was a man named Sean Gallagher. And Sean Gallagher was kind of new to the scene. And even though people had been teaching Pilates for 20, 30 years before he got on the scene, he decided that he owned the word Pilates. And he started sending cease and desist letters to anybody and everybody who used the word Pilates, even though some of these people had been teaching long before he showed up on the scene. And finally, enough people had had enough, and they grouped together along with Ken Endelman, who owns a major manufacturer named Balanced Body out of California, who was already producing Pilates equipment. And they gathered the masses and they took Sean Gallagher to the New York Supreme Court, and the New York Supreme Court deemed Pilates, the word, is a generic term like ballet or yoga or aerobics. And it was because of that the trademark was then overturned, and therefore it could be put to the masses. This did two things. One of them is great, one of them is terrible. The great thing is that it was no longer kept to this very small elite group of people who, for the rich and famous and whatnot. It was now for like everybody. In fact, we just lost somebody in our community named Mari Windsor, who suffered from ALS. And she was somebody who brought Pilates to the masses. A lot of like people's moms and aunts and, were like, yes, yeah, I used to watch those Mari Windsor VHSs. Like, yes, me too. So it meant that Pilates could be brought to everybody and anybody could use the word Pilates. That's kind of the bad part. The bad part is that Joe Blow down the street or Betty Sue could now say that they teach Pilates, but they have no real credentials. They have not gotten proper training, and they don't actually know the method or the pieces of equipment that come with it at all. but yet they teach Pilates. That's your little Pilates history 101.
It's been kind of crazy. You see, when I went out to search to get my Pilates certification, I didn't quite understand that sometimes there are studios out there that somebody went for a weekend training and now they're certified to move your body. So I would love to talk a little bit about the method and what you learn. So when you go to teacher training, we learn the method. What is the methodology?
So I know that today is all about breathing. So I would love to share a very simple, famous quote from Joe Pilates, who said it was the first thing we do and the last thing we do. Above all else, learn to breathe correctly. It is so true in every way. I'll let Cameron talk all about the breathing system and what all that affects. But, at the end of the day, breath is life. We all know that. We don't think about it because your body just does it, or you'll pass out and it'll force you to breathe anyway. But in Pilates, we focus a lot on deep breathing, and deep breathing used for focus, used for accelerating different muscle groups, and used for stability. In our teacher training, on that little history side note, it's true what Cameron said. You could today sign up for a $99 course that, I don't know, does a handful of hours over weekend, and voila, you're certified, you can teach Pilates. Or you could do the course that Cameron did, or some of the more respected courses out there where you spend almost a year of your life, a 600-hour apprenticeship. It costs thousands of dollars. It is super specialized training on super specialized equipment. But moving sort of aside from that, the thing that I would say about Pilates for those people that don't know really what Pilates is in a nutshell, Pilates is resistance training, plain and simple. And you're working oppositional forces, and you're figuring out what is moving and what is not moving, and how you can control that through breath and through muscle activity. It is Pilates' intent was absolutely that you were very focused. You weren't listening to loud thumping music while you were doing it. It was a very internal process. And that focus led you to greater mental clarity. And you felt better because all the systems were working more properly. Your digestive system. We have an exercise on the reformer called stomach massage. People often think it's a misnomer, but the truth is, it is stomach massage. It is literally working your lower region and helping those intestines not be quite so sluggish. You are, in fact, massaging your internal organs. And there's a lot of things like that in the Pilates method.
No, it's really crazy. Just thinking about different moves with the breaths, and the reformer Pilates was a genius. He basically had a yoga book, an anatomy book, and put them together and came up with Pilates. And he not just was able to see that and see the muscles, but he could make machines that kind of work different muscles deeply. Everything's on spring resistance, so you work on the way in and you work on the way out. So that's when you get that Pilates length of your spine, because one of his other sayings that I like is you're only as young as your spine. And so everything's about lifting and breath and filling everything up. And one of the big exercises you do when you first start is called footwork, and you align your feet. You have your toes on, your arches on, your heels on, and that massages, that activates and stimulates. It's the pressure points. If you remember in Eastern medicine, these are pressure points that activate different organs. So when you're pushing out against the ball of your feet, you're activating a different type of organ. So it's pretty cool to think about. When you do the big teacher training, you learn about that for a year. You learn about injuries. You learn about how to work people that are pregnant, that have lower back pain. Because your body is very important if you want somebody that's going to be able to look at it and know. So that's a great history lesson. Tell us a little bit about Pilates and healthy aging. You see people that, like the lady that owns a Pilates studio in Salt Lake, I look at her and she's in her late 60s, and I was like, I want to be you. I want to be you. How does it help with healthy aging?
Well, you kind of touched on one of the points, which is, and why I have personally stayed so dedicated to the original authentic method, is that Joe Pilates essentially had like let's call it one central focus. If you had a healthy, flexible, strong spine, life was good, and that would allow you to go out and enjoy all the other things that you like to do. the physical fitness culture was, nothing like it is today back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when that was really when Joe Pilates was fully developing his method as we know it now. And it was intended more as a tool so that you could be as strong and as physically fit and mentally clear. So if you wanted to do the strongman, super heavy, like circus style weightlifting, if you wanted to be a really strong swimmer or, a boxer, Joe Pilates was a big boxer. As far as the healthy aging process, there is no greater indication than how you're going to be able to function in your daily life than what is happening with your spine. It houses your your spinal cord. It is your tree of life. So if there is something happening with your back, it's going to affect all your systems. And then you can't go out and go do those other physical activities and get in the sun. And for me, I'm also a massive gardener. So I need to be able to have like that function to be able to get down, get up, go sideways, bend over, and be out doing those things that help keep me moving and healthy and young. And Pilates is a form of fitness that is appropriate for every age. And it is one of the most age-defying exercises, I think, personally. You can beat yourself up and do all the hardcore CrossFit and boot camps, and those things are all fine. They're all great. It is really to each his own what you enjoy and what you love. But, for Pilates, you can be very young and a triathlete. You can be very old and barely get off your couch, and you can still do Pilates. And we continue to work on mobilizing the spine and keeping it strong and keeping it flexible, because the thing that makes people real old real fast is when they can't get to their daily activities and be able to do the other things for themselves other than just working out that promote health. So that's...
I do agree with that. I mean, we're only as young as our spine, and we take a lot for granted, just whether it's gardening, picking something up from the ground, sitting down, sitting up. I remember just seeing that with my grandparents at a young age, like, man, you can't just get down and get up. And that's what I love about Pilates, is just kind of keeping that vitality, the longevity in every part of your body. It keeps you sparked, I guess. Yeah. It's an exercise, guys. When I go do this, I've been doing this for over 10 years now. So I take the advanced level system, and I dread it walking in that door. I'm like, because you have to focus everything. You're not going and thinking about this, because if you don't, everything is about focus. And I come out a whole new person, even though I dread every step in there, because I know I'm about to just get my booty handed to me, and then everything is going to be worked, but I'm going to walk out feeling taller, leaner. My lungs are going to be more open, and my state of mind. And that's what I want to share with Pilates, is looking into it. Rachel, do you have advice for people that are here or at home? Like, how can they get plugged in? Are there some good videos you recommend?
There's a couple of great resources. I mean, right now with everybody being stuck at home, there's pretty much almost every studio around the globe has either live streaming classes or they've got pre-recorded stuff. So my main advice to people is that when they're looking for Pilates, they need to look for a couple of things. One, you need to look for a bona fide certified individual. So anything sort of, let's call 450 hours as the cutoff point for a real certification. And you want to look for words like classical, authentic, classic, original, old school. Those are kind of some of the key phrases you would look for to be able to find a bona fide teacher. And then the other thing you want to look for is who speaks to you. What personality do you enjoy? Do you want somebody who's like fast and vivacious and really like the cheerleader, go, you can do this? Or do you need somebody more grounded, who's a little more zenned out and, wants to focus on things like that? Are you looking for somebody who seriously teaches from a anatomical standpoint? So there's a lot of different varieties, and you can just think about the workouts that you like to do. Who are your favorite teachers, and what are the qualities that you like about them? And then I would encourage to start looking. I mean, a simple Google search of like classical Pilates will bring up a ton of things. Let's call it a Pilates library that is all bona fide, very fantastic teachers is called Pilatesology.com. And that is like a, you can get like a monthly membership. I think it's probably no more than $20 a month. And that opens it up to a library of really top notch, heavy hitter, old school, classical, bona fide teachers. So that's a great resource.
I hadn't heard about that one. That's going to be great for me. And guys, one cool thing is if you go to YouTube and actually look up Joseph Pilates, you can see his old videos. They're pretty crazy about how long ago they were, and they're all in black and white, and you can watch the original movements and things like that. But I would love to end with teaching us actually how to breathe. What is the correct breath and why? And can you lead us through a little demo of these are the things to use when you're feeling stressed out, step away to help your body get out of that fight or flight mode?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to mute myself so I'm not huffing in the microphone. So.
Well, that's okay. So the correct way to breathe, that's a big conversation because there's a lot of different theories and modalities, and different people will tell you different things. The Pilates breath is essentially that you inhale through your nose and you exhale through your nose so that you're creating heat. Now, even in the Pilates community, there's a fair amount of debate. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose. I think it only matters what you feel. But what we're looking for in Pilates is that you're doing more of what we call a lateral posterior breathing. So it's like you're expanding your ribs out to the sides of the room like an accordion. And then as you exhale, you're trying to squeeze it shut. And what we can all do is what we call the 100-beat breath, which is one of the first exercises in Pilates. It's called the 100. It utilizes some basic 4th grade math. You do breathe in for 5 counts, you exhale for 5 counts, and you do that 10 times. Let's try. So you're going to inhale, and it's one, by the way, it's one consistent breath. It's not nothing like that. It is a solid full inhale. Inhale to your fullest capacity. Inhale. Exhale. If you inhale through your nose, which is the only way, inhale. If you choose to exhale through your mouth, try not to purse your lips and use your lips, but make it a guttural. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Try to keep it consistent. So you inhale slowly up and a up and a up and a up. You exhale, sustain slowly. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhale, squeeze out all the bad air. 2, 1. Inhale the good air. 4, 5, and exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. By the way, this is a good breath to use if you're feeling nervous or stressed, or you got some anxiety coming on. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes at night, then I start reading the articles that happen in the day, and I start getting a little stressed, and I will use that breath laying in bed, whether it's prayer or meditation or some sort of mantra that you got going on. I use that and kind of go through that while I'm breathing.
No, it is definitely, remember last week we talked about trauma and therapy and brain health, and Anastasia, Dr. Doulis, came in and talked about one of her healthy aging tips was learn to breathe. So this is learning to breathe. And I use this breath when I'm having my freaks out, and you just step out a little bit and close your eyes and get there. And it really, you were this is what you can do to trigger yourself out of flight or fight mode. And this is no exciting recipe or cool tip or gadget. This just works. We had 4 or 5 people talk about how breath just works in this series, from a hormone doctor all the way to Eastern medicine to a therapist. So learning that Pilates breath and getting all that air in, opening up, pull it. I try to focus on getting, I want to get air in this pocket, just every opening up of the lungs, and then getting all that air right back out before you. And it's amazing. So thank you for that demo. It was exactly perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, part 2 of stress is something that causes many Americans stress. I know right now is finances. And hopefully as we go into this and in future, you take this breath and you use this, and maybe some of us need this breath before we start talking about finances. So this finances doesn't have anything to do with, saving for retirement or figuring out the best stocks. This is just practical information. Because one thing, I got some really good advice in a book at one point, because I love reading leadership books and things like that. And another thing, if you don't get finances right in your life, it's hard to get anything else, because that just causes underlying low-level stress every single day. You can't out Pilates breath it. You can't have too much sauerkraut to fix that gut out of it. This is something you have to look in the eyeballs and say, I'm going to conquer you. So when I thought about this, things to help you release stress, I couldn't help but think about Michelle McMillan. She is my cousin. And I will say she helped my family. Her tips helped my family pay our credit card debt down. And they're nothing crazy. They're just so practical, because Michelle is a top businesswoman, a wedding business in Austin, Texas. I watched her build that business from the ground up with hard work and elbow grease. She also helped her family pay off over $100K in personal debt. And her advice helped me so much. I'm hoping that people that watch this can take this and say, it's not so scary to look at that monster in the eye and say, you're not going to cause this stress anymore. So Michelle, thank you for being on. I'm going to unmute you. Welcome.
Thank you, Cam. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you guys a little bit more. And also, I'm so proud of you. I love that I can be a part of this and everything that you're doing too. So I just want to say that to start also.
Well, thank you so much. I remember, like what I said to Rachel at the beginning, that the last time I saw her was during a Hurricane Harvey, and it was all stressful and traumatic, and feeling like this in this time of stress with the virus and everything. It's like the least we can do is kind of get together and help others while we're all kind of stranded at home. So yeah, whatever we can do to give back. So tell me a little bit about your story and what you do, your business. Share a little bit about she's somebody to look to for financial advice.
So I guess I'll start a little bit with my business, and then it kind of goes into when you and I started talking a little bit more about finances. But long story short, I went to college, I got a 4-year degree. I realized I was working in marketing and business marketing, advertising. I realized that wasn't my passion. I really wanted to do something that I was passionate about through, figuring out what that was through prayer and soul searching and things like that. I realized that I was going to be going to beauty school, which was a surprise to me and most people around me. I wanted to do a job that I loved, and I had a very specific goal. I wanted to do a job that I was passionate about and I loved, and I wanted to make a 6-figure income doing it. I had asked a lot of people who had jobs that they loved if they were happy, and a lot of people who had jobs that they loved didn't make a lot of money doing them. I knew a lot of friends that made good money, and a lot of those people who made good money didn't love what they did. And I knew that there had to be a sweet spot in there, like who does what they love and makes good money. And of course, good money is different for everybody. So I put a specific number on it. So I knew, and so, sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't, but I at least had somewhere to aim. So I started doing hair and makeup. I worked in a salon for 5 years. And then after that, I started a company called Mission Style House. We have now a team. I started doing a lot of wedding hair and makeup. And then I continued to grow that. And now I have a team of 12 people, artists that I now just run the business. So I send my artists to special events. It's very wedding heavy. So we're working mostly with brides. And then, that's my team, Mission Style House, right now that I have. And then in terms of finances, did you want me to kind of touch on how that all worked in, or?
Yeah, just a little bit about your background in the sense that, when you read your story, you're very much have always been the busy budgeter, conscious, and, as you realize that as you were getting married, what you needed to do to get rid of a lot of people have that burden, credit card debt. What were the
Yeah.
steps that you guys started realizing to take that burden down?
Yeah. So, just a little bit, I guess, then about me is I was raised to pay close attention to what I was doing. My dad is very direct. He was just basically like, don't be an idiot, So his approach is very hands-on. It's like, it's not sensitive at all. So it's kind of funny because that's always in my mind. But when I met my then boyfriend, think about and handle his money was polar opposite of how I was raised. So when I met him, he had a very expensive home in an expensive zip code. He had 2 children. He had just been divorced. He was a successful entrepreneur, but didn't have a handle on where his money was going, and didn't, and had just a lot of things. He was driving a very nice vehicle. I was living in an apartment with a roommate. I had a 2012 Honda Civic that had been paid for forever. So we were just, you can see we were in really different worlds. And that can be really scary when you're getting married, to bring those two things together, especially when people are always like, well, finances is, probably one of the top things that ruins a marriage. So you really do want to be careful, but I think it definitely can be done. So when we sat down and had a conversation about that, before we ever opened, logged into a bank account, before we ever really showed each other or really got into a meeting that was going to be stressful, we had a conversation prior. And I think one of the number one things, especially when you're dealing with another person with your finances, when you're bringing someone else on board, is having the initial conversation about where you want to be and really getting on the same page with that person. And it's usually, if you're, and then maybe a couple days later, open the bank accounts, take a look at the credit card statements, or, don't do it all at once, because it is very overwhelming. Like you said, it's finance and debt and those situations. It can kind of be a monster. It can be a little scary. Everyone handles it a little bit differently, but I don't think there's anyone that's excited about debt, And so it's really, it can be very sensitive. So the first thing is just getting on the same page. So for us at that time, we really knew that one of the things we wanted to do was to, scale down the debt. But then once doing that, we wanted to put ourselves into a position where we were able to live so far beneath our means that we were able to save. And we had a specific goal there. Again, we wanted to save 20% to put down on a house. So, so little things. So that was always our kind of go back. Like, do we want to go on vacation this year, or how will that set us farther back on our goal to buy a home? Things like that. So that's usually what we would do. And then in terms of paying off that debt, that was overwhelming. We really did have, and this was hard, and I have read this and I have told people this several times, finances it can be scary, it can be intimidating, but it's not difficult. Personal finances are actually pretty simple when you just get down to it. 20% of it is maybe understanding some of your interest rates and things like that. But if those words seem scary or intimidating, you don't even really have to fully understand. You don't need a finance degree to understand your personal spending. It can be very simple. 20% of it might be understanding. It's just like with diet, Cam. You probably say similar things, like 80% of it is your behavior. So once you kind of put together your plan, it's not really spending all the time doing budgeting. It's really on that day to day saying, do I need to make this purchase? It's all behavior after that. So we just really focused. We would have a meeting once per month where we would sit down. It was usually on a Sunday. And we would go over, we would take a look and log into our bank accounts. We did use a tool called Mint. That was very helpful for us at the time. We're not using Mint anymore. Now we're just using like our QuickBooks. We can log in and check everything there. But Mint was very helpful for us to set up budgets in certain categories. And it was really surprising how many charges, when you're checking it regularly, you don't even know about. we were like, wait, what's that? Oh, I signed up for that, you know? So, but in terms of paying things off, I do like the idea of paying. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You know, Dave Ramsey is a very like super famous financial advisor, guru, whatever. And he does recommend the snowball method of paying off the smallest one first, as opposed to tackling the giant debt. The reason for that is because if you can pay off that smaller amount, it gives you that motivation. You're like, oh, I can do this. And then it snowballs and you get the next one. If you start with the big one, a lot of times people will burn out and they'll feel lost, that they're never going to pay this debt off, and they just give up. So, you know, it is really you deciding what you think will work best for you, but that's kind of my take on what our situation was and how we handled tackling some of that debt.
No, there's a lot of helpful tips in there, because one thing you'll see in your worksheets when we talked about scheduling your stress care, you have to you need to every week look, how am I going to take care of myself? When am I going to do Pilates? What am I going to do? Your stress care is just like your self-care. And it's the same thing with budgeting. And that's one thing we learned from you. At any time you start something new, setting a goal gives you some motivation. So being able to talk together, whether it's just you or you and another person or whatever, but getting a piece of paper, and there's power to making a goal and just writing that goal down, saying, I want to, whatever it might be, get out of debt, save for a car, college tuition, whatever, it doesn't matter. But putting that down is that step one, and then taking some time and giving yourself space. I loved that you said, you know, get your goals ready and then take a few days and then get down. And another piece of advice you gave us was to know your number. And that's when you log in. And when you feel like you're in debt and you have all kinds of stuff going on, when you just know your number, there's power in knowing, as scary as it is. Was a really great tip. And Mint too, it's a free program as well. Can you explain to everybody a little bit about how Mint helped? And it's just a free website. We're not plugging it or anything. It just, yeah, your website, and it's just cool.
So Mint was helpful because it was basically like a digital budget calculator. And you do link it to your, you know, your bank and your credit cards. So everything that we spent, we would go in and we would categorize things really easily. It was just kind of neat to see how much were we spending on groceries? How much are we buying on iTunes and renting movies? How much are, you know, and so it gives you an idea. And different people have different disciplines with it. You know, you might set your budget, you set your own budget so you can see it. It's also, you can have an app on your phone, but you can see it so much that if you're using it if you're so disciplined with it, you could literally be sitting there and thinking, can I make this purchase right now? Do I have enough? And if your Mint is updated, you can go into your budget for restaurants and say, do I have enough to eat out this month? People don't have that mindset because credit cards make you feel like you always have the money to eat out. But the reality is that you can look and know how much you've set aside for that budget, and you can check back into it if you need to. So it's just a nice reminder to keep you on track.
Well, it's so much easier. It's not that blank page effect where you have the paper, all right, let's make a budget, and it's just a blank piece of paper. It gives you guidance, which is very important. Just have, with you and your advice, just giving us guidance is taking power of the situation. And one thing you talk about when we have our glass of wine and gal chat is the financial filter that you kind of talk about. Tell us about your financial filter you use.
Oh my gosh. So I think that we are all, especially those of us who are on social media and scrolling through stories and doing different things. You know, I use the term financial filter just because it's so relevant with filters on Instagram and things like that. It's more of like a mindset. So I know for myself, my goals now today are different than they were a couple of years ago, but I think that we have to just know what we're being sold all the time. And it's happening now in more and more, you know, sneaky little ways. Your best friend, I know I have best friends who are influencers. So I just go on to see a picture of their kid, and now I'm supposed to buy a jumpsuit from Walmart, or, you know what I mean? And I love my friend that does these things, but you have to know that you don't have to buy that. That is, you are being sold all the time. You're being told, or you're being influenced to buy things all the time. So just to have that filter of like, do I need this? And sometimes it's okay, buy the jumpsuit, buy the sunglasses, buy the, you know, curling iron, of course, do it if it fits with your budget, but to actually have that filter to know when to say no. I even tell my younger girls, just have the filter to know when you're being sold to know if this is something that I need, or if it's something that I want, or something that really is going to be totally useless to me. So the example I've used many times is at the beginning of the school year, right before back to school, they move all the backpacks to the very front of the store. You don't need a backpack just because it's sitting in the front of the store. The backpack you just used 3 months ago, 2 months ago is absolutely fine. You don't need to buy that, And so those are the conversations I have like with my little girls. But the same thing goes for us, just because someone's showing their skincare regimen and they're using 17 creams on their face in the morning, you're not going to go and buy all of those things just because that girl, it doesn't even necessarily work for her. She's probably just trying to make some some money on selling you the product. The other thing that I said that you would like too is when you're trying to figure out how to maybe save a little bit of money, one of the things, it's like I kind of have it piggyback with health a little bit. How in the health world they talk about like an elimination diet. What about an elimination diet with your spending? So, most of us, subscription businesses are a big, big business. And I know myself, I've gotten boxes and I'll just be on it for an extended amount of time of something you might not need, or any subscription or something like that, or just any purchase. Try going in and really reevaluating, like, do I need to be spending this? And it doesn't have to be a subscription, but what can I eliminate from my spending that I don't actually really like, or doesn't serve me or bring me joy? And then I always come back to, like, if you're buying, a lot of times people are buying things to try to be happy, to try to look prettier, to try to be cool. People buy things for a lot of different reasons. And a lot of times the main thing is people are trying to be happier, better versions of themselves. And I always say endorphins are free. Every single day, endorphins are free. Go for a run. You'll feel better, So that's just a couple.
Endorphins are free. I'm going to use that for
every day.
When I say it's time for exercise time, I will quote them on that and they will love it.
Yes.
No, I really, overall, at the end of the day, there's so many people, whether you're starting out in marriage or you're 50 years into it, whatever, that have surmounting debt it's easy to not look it in the eye and to put it on the back burner and not think about your budget and just kind of live in obliviousness. But the biggest thing I see is how much stress it causes. It really does. I mean, there's a reason why it's the number one cause of divorce, is because the finances are hard. And so what I like about when I talk to you is just, doesn't make it as scary. You can make it fun. And when you get on the same team and you have a goal and you meet those goals and you research and you plug stuff into your Mint and you watch those numbers slowly chip away, then you become empowered. And that's what's really exciting. You get confidence and the stress relieves and you feel better. And finances are one of those underlying things that I know a lot of health people don't talk about, health coaches. I've never seen it in a program, but I truly believe in one random training I took, somebody just said, if you don't take care of your finances, you're not taking care of your life. And I needed to hear that because I needed to see it and I needed to remove that so I can remove the stress from my life. So that's really exciting. So what are your 3 steps? If we have people here, whether they're just going to start, they have no debt, they want to start saving, or they're going to start tackling some debt, like what can people do in the next few days to kind of start relieving some stress? I know your number is one of them. I love that one. So.
Yeah. That is definitely one of them. And I've touched on them, all 3 of my kind of main tips a little bit. It's been interesting to me too, even just with talking to some of my friends and with my husband, everyone's personality and ability to handle different levels of debt is so different. I would probably be the one in our marriage that's more stressed about it. He's very much more relaxed about it. I have friends, everyone handles it so differently. But I do think that, yes, number 1 would be knowing your number. I think a mistake that a lot of people, because it's scary, it's almost like they just want to push it over there into that box and then just, usually for months and months and months and months, they can forget about it and things will be okay. And then something will inevitably happen. So if you can just get ahead of it, I think that eliminates a lot of potential stress. knowing how much money is actually coming in, understanding the bills that you have to pay. And I do think that a good practice would be to sit down either with yourself or your partner and write all of that down and just really have a good idea for what you're doing. And then setting 1 or 2 financial goals. It doesn't have to be huge. It can just be something that's very simple that will help you to feel like you're making progress towards, not having debt. When you have debt, I always think of this term, but you're a slave to the lender. You don't have freedom if you're constantly owing someone money. And it's just such a free feeling to not have to owe people. So devising some sort of plan by knowing what those numbers are, creating, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, but creating a little bit of a budget so that you can stay within a comfortable area so that you're not going either further into debt or you're coming up with an idea on how you can gradually pay it off. The other tip I really like is doing the financial elimination diet. Take a deep dive into what you're spending your money on. Y'all will be shocked when you look at your credit card statements line by line. And I stay up on it. We're not going to do it this month, but I will go in and I'll see a charge and I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. You mean to tell me I've been spending, $17 a month on Apple iTunes for the last 8 months, and I didn't even know, in-app purchases are really sneaky and they can get in there and it seems like, $2.99. And then it's subscription. And then all of a sudden, not that that's a ton of money, but those are just little things, stay up on that stuff. And then the third one is to just strengthen your financial filter. When you're going about your day, even just for me, I probably today I've been, what are people trying to sell to you? Just crap that you don't need, and just try to strengthen that so that that pings when something's happening and you're getting that urge, like, hey, I really want this. Now, I'm not saying don't buy yourself something if you really want it and you can afford it, but I'm just saying, just try to be more aware of those things that might be unnecessary purchases that aren't progressing your financial goals. And I'm not saying I think a lot of times people feel that they're depriving themselves. It's not deprivation. If you're progressing your financial goals, you should feel good about that, so that's just it's like a mindset shift of saying, I'm not depriving myself. And I'm talking wants, not needs here, but you're working towards something that's going to provide you freedom and less stress in your life. So those are kind of like my starter tips.
No, and they're good. Just writing that down. It's just getting out the gate. It's getting started. It's looking at your stress in the eye and saying, I'm going to start taking care of you. And it can seem like a huge overwhelming if you've got, whether it's student loans, all that stuff like that, but just understanding where you are, looking at goals. And I like that, the financial elimination diet, that's really cool. Talk about that, diving deep into what you're spending and thinking about it and making it an active part of your life keeps that stress down for a long time, because stress, guys, really, really does. Those hormones that are released, they feed the bad gut bacteria, they damage cells, they make it where we can't replicate well in our body. And it's just important to keep that low because everything is in cellular replication. So keeping our cells healthy and not damaged from the actual hormonal process that's going in our body is key. So I hope you guys took today some breathing techniques, whether you're mad at your partner because he's driving you nuts because you didn't, clean the sink again in quarantine, or you're feeling stressed about your budget, or whatever it might be. Take these breaths. I promise you, if you try those Pilates breaths on your own, you will see they definitely will calm you down and switch you out of that mode. And I hope for those that are in financial crisis or getting married, took these tips away to kind of reduce stress from a financial standpoint. So thank you both for being here today. Does anybody have any questions? I know I kept a little over than 45 minutes, but practical real world advice is important. I don't see any questions, but everybody, thank you for coming to these series. It's been an awesome 5 weeks. I hope you learned something. I know I did. And all our panelists have been incredible. All women, incredibly experienced, incredibly talented, and enjoy the rest of your month. Thank you, everybody.